Hey, how you doing, YouTube? It's your boy Brogi Naric back again with another episode of BUMP Psychology with my man Cuba, the GOAT, and we're going to be reviewing the Collision in Korea episode of Dark Side of the Ring. But before we get into it, don't forget to like this video, share and subscribe to the channel. All right, so let me first introduce my guest, Cuba, the GOAT. Cuba, let the people know where they can find you, man.
Find me at YouTube at Cuba the GOAT. Just like last week, I am the greatest Michael Jordan reactor. I am technically the greatest dance choreography reactor.
You really are. Those videos be killing, right?
I had a lot of them, but I had to delete them for some stuff. But check out the Chris Brown. That is hot right now. People still commenting on it. 1K likes. 1K likes and still growing. So yeah. And if you want to be added to the list, just hit me up.
All right. So as I said, we're going to be reviewing the latest episode of Dark Side of the Ring on Vice TV, which focuses on the Collision in Korea, or as it's known in North Korea, the Pyongyang International Sports and Cultural Festival for Peace. This is considered... that's what it's called in English translation. This is the largest wrestling event in the world, as it's a record, which is up for debate, but it's considered the largest wrestling event in the world, one of the largest attendance rates in the world. This happened back in, I forgot to write the date. Was it 1994? Now I feel like an asshole. 95. It was 95. All right.
Like what, 138,000 people, right? Something like that.
It was more than that. It was like 100. Yeah, they claimed it was 100, and it was 2-night event. It was 170,000 the first night, 190,000 on the second night. But of course, it was forced attendance because that's how they get down in North Korea.
They said if they ain't show up, they would shoot them.
That's what one of the guys said. So this was a weird episode. I was not familiar with this event. I had heard of it, but I didn't really necessarily think it was controversial enough to be a part of Dark Side of the Ring. But I believe the creators of the show said that this was an episode that was requested a lot by the fans, so that's why they ultimately made the episode. After watching it, I don't think it was all that necessary to do this episode, because it was a little weak. I would say this is definitely one of the weaker episodes that they've produced.
Yeah, clearly not the best.
Yeah. Like, it's a fine episode, but it's like, all right, you went on a trip and then you left the trip. You had a bad time.
Technically, yeah.
That's the episode.
I know it tells me that I'm never going out there, and that's no disrespect.
Yeah, that's true.
Koreans out there, LeVar Ball's son. Well, that was in China.
Yeah, that's China. That's different. But yeah, so that was the the episode starts off with Eric Bischoff, who was a former announcer and the former president of WCW. He's a podcaster, one of Hulk Hogan's friends, and also a known bullshitter. I don't like when he's in this show because pretty much everything he says is at least 80% bullshit, and there was a lot of stuff he said in this episode where I'm like, that don't make no fucking sense.
You don't like him, do you?
I like him when he's like a wrestling character, but like him as how he handles business, not so much, because he's a known bullshitter. So I'm just like, I can't take anything you say seriously. And he was clearly more in like comedy mode in this as opposed to serious, which, I mean, the situation's, it's not really that big of a deal. But he was the one who helped, they talk about him forming the partnership with between WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling as a way to mend the partnership between those two companies, as a way to compete against the WWF in the early 90s. And it was a successful partnership. And we're also introduced to Antonio Inoki, who I was surprised was in this. They got him for this episode. This was like a big deal. He's a famous wrestler in Japan. He's the founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he was also a politician. He's kind of like, even more so than Hulk Hogan. I would say he's more like Japan's like version of The Rock, or Vince. Yeah, like The Rock and Vince. I would say he's like The Rock and Vince because he was a wrestler, but he also owned a promotion. But then he's also into politics. Like he's done a lot of things. And
like Jesse Ventura, maybe, but not as he's bigger than
that. But yeah, I guess that's a good way of in terms of wrestling and politics, and I guess a little acting or whatever. I was surprised they got him in this. He really brought a lot of interesting insights into this because he was the one that was in politics. He was the head of what was it called, the Sports and Peace Party. And he deliberately took political positions that the Japanese government didn't like, and he was visiting North Korea and trying to make some sort of mend some of the tension between the two countries because they have their history of beef between each other. I don't know the history that well to know which side is right or wrong, but North Korea don't fuck with Japan. Japan don't really fuck with North Korea or Korea as a whole, but specifically North Korea as well. So he was trying to make something happen. He decided, hey, let's do a big wrestling show. That might help.
Wrestling will cure everything, right?
Wrestling will fix the world problems, I guess. So he hits up with Bischoff, and he's like, hey, we want some of the WCW guys to come along. They wanted to do this big show. He mentioned that they were trying to get a lot of big celebrities involved. They mentioned they might have wanted to get Michael Jackson, which I don't think he would have been all that interested. But I love that they were aiming high. They were like, we want to get the biggest stars, because Korea was cool with it. Japan was like, okay, cool. Bischoff claims that the U.S. government wasn't that happy about them doing it.
He still went along with it.
Yeah, he says even the people at Turner that he worked for didn't know he was leaving for North Korea, which is that's bullshit. That doesn't even make sense. You just don't take you don't take that many Americans and just be like, we're going to North Korea, especially that high profile. It's like, come on now, that don't even make sense. But he was also the one who decided to contact Muhammad Ali to join, and he claims that Ali was excited to go. He's an ambassador of world peace, which I don't necessarily deny that I felt like he might have been talked into it. I feel like he might have had to been talked into it a little more than what Bischoff makes it seem like. He's like, oh yeah, he was just down to go to North Korea. I'm like, I don't know if I buy that, but him going, I guess it's understandable. He's a big star,
Right.
So then they talk about the group of wrestlers that they had going. So we had Ric Flair, because they wanted to get Hulk Hogan, but Hulk Hogan said he wasn't interested.
That's not for me, brother.
Yeah, he said, that's too big for me, brother. And I love that. I love that Inoki, he low-key calls Hulk Hogan a punk, but he's like, he's a very careful man. I'm like, yeah, you call him a bitch. I get it, Inoki. But
and you can't blame Hogan though. Hogan knew what was up. He like, I ain't going down there.
Yeah, Hogan. I mean, exactly. I don't blame him. But they couldn't get Hogan, so they settled for Ric Flair, which honestly would have been the better opponent anyway. Sadly, we couldn't,
because Hogan ain't
doing the job. So
he ain't doing the job,
and Inoki ain't doing the job either. So they just would have been a standstill. But so they get Ric Flair. And I wish we could have got an interview from Flair, but he's with the WWE, so he's not gonna be a part of the show.
Which sucks, man.
It does.
Make amends before you all be added to the list.
Yeah, that does suck. But we do get everyone's favorite wrestler, Scott Norton. Everyone's favorite wrestler, Scott Norton.
It just went down.
Yeah, so Scott Norton, he was one of the people who was on the show. I'm not familiar with this guy. I remember he popped up in the Road Warriors episode, and I'm like, I knew the name, but I've never really seen many of his matches, or if any of his matches. You know what I'm saying?
I've seen that episode. I want to say I did.
Yeah, it was a good.
I want to say I've seen all of them.
It was a good episode, but so he was a wrestler. He was working with New Japan at the time, but he was like in between WCW, New Japan, but he was mainly with New Japan at the time.
Right.
He talks about he basically, most of his moments in the episodes him just complaining about the various inconveniences of being in North Korea. Like nothing like too bad, but it was just like, we got on the plane, everybody was a little worried, but Ali showed up and calmed them down. He was doing some magic tricks. He talks about them getting on the plane and how the plane was like an old like World War II plane.
1940.
Like World War II plane, and it was like very rickety, and Ric Flair's freaking out. He's just like, we're not gonna make it, and all this shit. Which I definitely believe. All the stories about Ric Flair freaking out, I definitely believe that.
20 years ago, he was in a plane crash.
Yeah, you're right. He survived the plane crash. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So they go. We also are introduced to Too Cold Scorpio, aka Flash Funk. He's dope as shit. AKA what?
AKA the Goblin from Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor. That is what he looked like in that freaking screenshot you sent. Scared the hell out of me. Bald with them damn ears.
Yeah, he's got a rough look, but he was a wrestler. He was part of the trip. He was excited to go to North Korea because it would be a new experience. That was kind of some of the guys' feelings. Like, well, we've never done this before, so let's go. The wrestlers involved were, for the U.S. wrestlers, we got Ric Flair, Too Cold Scorpio, Scott Norton, Road Warrior Hawk, the Steiner brothers,
Chris Benoit.
And Chris Benoit. Yeah, and Chris Benoit. And then we have some New Japan wrestlers. I'm not familiar with them, so I don't know the names, but there was some New Japan wrestlers. And one thing the series didn't mention, but there were also women wrestlers on the trip as well. We saw a few clips of them throughout the episode. We saw Bull Nakano and stuff like that. So there was some lady wrestlers, Japanese lady wrestlers there as well. So they get to North Korea. Things were weird. A lot of military presence. They get their passports taken. They got military soldiers just surveilling them. I think they were there for like a week or like 5 days. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. But when they're there, the crew is forced to participate in various celebrations of the dead North Korean leader. He had recently passed or something, so they have them going there and placing flowers at the statue and have them cut promos of how awesome North Korea is, stuff like that. Propaganda type of stuff. And then we also get the guy, what's his name, Mike Shinoy, who was like a CNN reporter at the time, and he was.
Yeah, I forgot his name.
Yeah. He was like a reporter that covered the event, and he was good in this episode because he was the one that kind of just explains how bizarre this whole situation with North Korea was.
Wrestling event.
Yeah, this like big wrestling event. Like, I guess that's going to make world peace. Like, it's just a weird situation. But like, everyone has their reasons for doing it. North Korea wants to use it as a way to make them look good. Inoki wants to use it as a way to potentially get reelected. WCW, they can make some money, so it's just whatever. Scott Norton talks about they went to go play some pool, and then it took a while for them to get the pool balls, and they dropped one of the balls, and then one of the soldiers got mad at him, and he was like, he wanted to beat up one of the soldiers, but he didn't because he probably would have got shot.
No career.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but before that, they showed them in their room. And then they have the guards about 10, 15 feet away from them just watching them.
Yeah, that's watching them.
So that's how strict they were.
Yeah, Scott Norton talks about he was like having a conversation with his wife, and she didn't know where he was for like at least like 2 or 3 of the days. And he's talking to her, and he's like, "Oh, this place sucks." And then the phone cuts, and because he was talking shit about North Korea, they tell him, "Don't do that shit again," or da da da. So
come into some basement dungeon or whatever.
Yeah, and he's interrogated. They go to another temple where they had to walk up a mountain, and Ali does some shadow boxing, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's cool. This is Ali. He's shadow boxing."
But they also had, of course, Ali shadow boxing. They didn't know what the hell was going to go on right there.
Yeah, but, exactly.
Too Cold Scorpio and
Hawk.
Hawk.
Yeah.
Getting into it.
Yeah.
Hawk allegedly said the N-word. I know you're gone. But if you were still alive, you would have made the list as well. He said, Too Cold Scorpio said he said the N-word. And then what Scott Norton was like, he took some drugs. And Hawk would have beat his ass. Yeah, I don't think that's the case.
So yeah, I'd heard the story before, but I didn't know it was in North Korea. But yeah, Flash Funk, Too Cold Scorpio was basically, he was like, he had heat with Flair. Hawk had been riding around with Flair. They got on the tour bus. All the boys was in the tour bus. Flair had his own car. Something about Flair was looking for someone to ride with him, and Two Cold Scorpio say, "Oh, fuck that pussy." Da da da. Hawk got mad, and then they got into it. Apparently, Hawk called him the N-word and then tried to punch him, but Two Cold Scorpio dodged it, and then they got into fighting. He gave him the work. They tried to hold him back. Hawk came back at him a little bit, then he got back at him. They had a fight, and in the episode, he's basically talking about like, yeah, I beat his ass and da da da. Scott Norton tries to cape for Hawk, saying he was on his hepatitis C medicine, so that weakened him. A likely story, I guess.
Shouldn't have said shit.
Shouldn't have been talking shit, but whatever. And later, and then later on, they have another fight. Well, not necessarily a fight, but he talks about they met up later on, and Hawk sucker punched him. So he's this
at the temple.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was when they were leaving the temple, and he claims he was trying to solve the beef, and Hawk just punched him. So from that point on, Two Cold Scorpio was like, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker.
He had a shield.
Yeah, he talks about
he took 2 chopsticks, saw them against the window, trying to make a shiv, and said, "We'll stab him and kill him." Benoit's like, "Nah, that's not a good idea."
Yeah, Benoit
saying some shit.
Chris Benoit, of all people, is the one who's telling Scorpio, "Hey, don't kill this person."
What kind of shit is that?
That shit crazy. I know. But he was just like, he had the stainless steel chopsticks. He was like slowly like dropping them and then like petting away, getting another one, dropping it, petting away. Real gangster shit. And he was like, I'm gonna make a shit. Yeah. I'm gonna kill this motherfucker. But it's like, Benoit rightfully is like, don't do it, because if you kill someone here, you're not getting out of this country. So
12 years later, what happened?
Cooler heads prevailed, but anyway, so they have the show, and that's when they talk about as we said, the forced attendance to the show. Now this was interesting, where they were like, it was the big crowd. They have a huge event. They have this big extravagant like showcase and like a big prep rally, halftime show type shit times like 20. And then they just have a wrestling match. They have some wrestling matches like 2 days in a row. And I thought it was interesting when they were like, the North Korean people had no idea what wrestling was, or at least they hadn't seen it in a while, because Norton was talking about his match, the crowd was dead. All the other matches, the crowd was dead. They was just looking at him, and it's just like, you have this huge crowd and no one's barely reacting. And I know the Asian crowd, especially in like New Japan, they're usually quiet most of the time anyway, but they would just
some shit happened. Start getting excited.
Yeah, they were just talking about how weird it was. So in Inoki talks, he considers this a badge of honor because this is one of the bigger crowds that he's ever been in front of. Two Cold Scorpio said that's the one thing he's got over Hulk Hogan, is he performed in front of the largest crowd ever. So the second night they had the match of Inoki versus Flair, and that was the match that the crowd actually got into, because the people actually they knew who Inoki was, and I like that they explained what was the thing they explained. So Antonio Inoki had his match with Flair, was a way to honor his master, the guy that trained him, Ricky Dozan, who was a very popular wrestler in Japan, but he was secretly Korean. And his master, Ricky Dozan, he was very popular in Japan, but he was secretly Korean. He was hiding his Korean heritage while living in Japan, and he was killed by some Yakuza for being Korean, and his death was used as propaganda for the North Koreans on why they should hate Japan. And Antonio Inoki was connected to that guy, so they kind of knew of Inoki through that. So they were more willing to cheer for Inoki than Flair. They didn't know who the fuck Flair was. They didn't, the American. That was that thing when Eric Bischoff was like, he went jogging one morning without security, and he was jogging and he was just scaring a bunch of Korean people. I don't believe that story at all. But I don't. Because if they were under that much surveillance, no one saw him when he left to go jogging down the street.
I thought he was going to leave in the morning. He said it was the morning, right?
He said it was like in the morning as the sun was rising. and he just went for a jog. And I'm like, no one was watching you. If they were under that much surveillance, no one saw you leave. But whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that because they watched Scott Norton go to this room and then to the pool table.
Exactly.
Because he said he was gonna let his what they call the female he was with,
his attaché or something he called it.
Attaché. Yeah. He said when they came back, she was pissed off.
She was pissed off, and he was like he was worried because like she might end up getting gone. And I'm like, that could have happened. She could have just disappeared. But so they had the match. It was a success, I guess, ultimately. And then we find out Too Cold talks about him and Hawk had a conversation. They met in the hallways like the last night. And he tells him like, hey, we can finish this when we get back to Japan if you want to, but like, I'm trying to settle it or whatever. And then Hawk basically tells him like, hey, my bad. I'm on my medication. I ain't got my drugs. So I'm just a little haywire. Let's cool. And then like Scorpio said, he was like, well, we can handle it in Japan if you want to. Apparently that never happened. I remember Scorpio saying that him and Hawk eventually got past this. Not like they made up, but like they never just had no conflict after that. And
should have said an N-word, Hawk.
Well, hey, you talk shit, you go get hit. Scott Norton was really trying to cape for Hawk, but like, he's not as good as Animal. If you watch the Road Warrior episodes, Animal is much better at making Hawk sound like a decent person as opposed to Scott Norton, who's like, Hawk's a bit of an asshole, but it is what it is. He was my friend, so it is what it is.
He was with him for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, they grew up together. So they get back. Everyone is excited to get back to Japan. Flair kisses the ground once they landed, and that's the end of the story. They all live happily ever after. So
that's it.
That's it. That's it. Sadly, there was no interview from Rick Steiner or Scott Steiner. I would have liked to seen them pop up in this, but they didn't get them. So
it had hardly just barely any wrestlers in the interview. Really, Eric Bischoff, he ain't a wrestler. Inoki. Scott Norton, Too Cold Scorpio. And who else?
They had Sonny Ono, but he was a manager. They interviewed him.
It, right?
Yeah, those are like the only wrestlers they had, really. Because the others they couldn't interview. Well, you had Flair, couldn't interview him. And like I said, I don't know why. Benoit's dead. And Too Cold Scorpio, Hawk's dead. And
Hawk's dead, yeah.
Like I said, the Steiners aren't involved for some reason, so I don't know.
Wow. Like the main people, Ali's dead.
Yeah.
Like that.
So they got everyone they could.
Yeah.
But yep, that was the episode. Like I said, it's not the most action packed, not the darkest. Probably on the lower end, I would say, of like least favorites, I would say. But
they built it up like it was gonna be one of the greatest. That's why I wanted to check the thing out.
Yeah. See, after watching this now, I'm more worried about the Plane Ride from Hell episode, because that seems like even less of a story. But they're going to try to.
I don't want to see that. I want to hear them stories.
Yeah, but it's like true, but you don't have Vince, you don't have Kurt Hennig. I think was on one. Brock Lesnar was on one, so I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, who are they going to get? Jim Ross? That's it.
I heard they're going to get like some of the ECW guys. Because this was when ECW was teaming up with WWE at the time. So, like, Tommy Dreamer, I think they said, and I think RVD, they said we're going to be in that episode, but whatever. Next episode is Ultimate Warrior. That should be interesting. Looking forward to that. Yeah.
That might be... It should be better than this one.
It should be. Yeah, it's got Jake... Yeah. So, exactly. So... that's all we got for this one. We're going to sign off here. Cuba, let the people know where they can find you.
Find me on YouTube, of course, Cuba the GOAT. YouTube Gaming. Well, not YouTube Gaming. God damn it. YouTube Cuba the GOAT Gaming as well on YouTube. I got to be more consistent on that channel as well. Trying to crack 100 subscribers on that.
There you go.
Going for 5,000 on the main channel. 100 on the gaming channel, but more consistent on this this reaction channel. But yeah, social media, same thing. IG, Twitter, Q the GOAT, and that's it.
All right, and I'm your boy BrogiNaric. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, BrogiNaric. We should be back. Yeah, we should be back next week with the Ultimate Warrior episode. But thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.
Yeah, Peace. Y'all on the list.